a misconception that lesbian means a woman who loves other women. And actually, the definition is non-men who are attracted to and love other non-men. There's like a zillion different ways to be a lesbian.
We have a lot to talk about today. To date, that is one of the craziest 49 seconds of my life. I came across this video 2 days ago, and my blood has been boiling for 2 days, and I knew that I immediately not only wanted to talk about this, but I wanted to show this video to you in full. Yes, there is more, because the claims that this person is making are just so absolutely outrageous and backwards that I think it's important for everybody to hear what this person has to say. But before anything else, let me show you this video in full and let's break this shit down together.
There's a misconception that lesbian means a woman who loves other women. And actually, the definition is non-men who are attracted to and love other non-men. Throughout history, there have always been gender non-conforming lesbians. And it's interesting to see nowadays that there are some folks who kind of try to gatekeep that identity and only include folks who identify as women, when that's not what being lesbian is all about. There are trans men who identified as a lesbian for many, many years and still feel comfortable within that community and that identity. There are non-binary folks of all kinds who identify as lesbians. There's like a zillion different ways to be a lesbian. And if that word is what's comfortable for you, then nobody can gatekeep it from you. I am non-binary, transmasculine, and I'm a lesbian.
First of all, what is a lesbian? According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of lesbian is of relating to or characterized by sexual or romantic attraction to other women or between women. And I don't know why, but the second definition they put of or relating to lesbos, I think that's a little uncalled for, but whatever. Right off the bat, let's call into question where this person got this definition from. Because as I'm going to be throwing up on the screen, no major, I guess you can say, definition publication has the word lesbian defined anywhere closely related to this. Nowhere. None of them have any sort of relation to this definition. So right off the bat, where this definition came from is thrown automatically into question. Whether this definition was found on TikTok or on Twitter or some sort of, I don't know, Reddit forum, that's the kind of thing that you can automatically consider when someone says something like this that's pretty much not backed up by anyone. And about the gender non-conforming lesbians, they're called butch lesbians, girl. They used to call them tomboys. What the fuck are you talking about? She's a butch queen, mama. Butch lesbians are iconic members of the gay community. So I don't know why you're trying to rewrite what their name is. It's giving very much birth givers, and we don't do that around here, bitch. Stop trying to erase women, specifically in this case, lesbian women. First it was women's sports, then we had to say that anybody can menstruate, then we had to say that anybody can get pregnant, and now we can't even actually define the word lesbian as it's always been defined anymore because it's offensive or not inclusive or not the right way to be a lesbian. I, just like many others, am starting to believe that we are quite literally trying to just blatantly erase women. Because lately you guys can't really seem to have anything anymore. You guys can't have sports to yourself anymore. And apparently you guys are not allowed to be lesbians anymore because apparently anybody can be a lesbian. It's no longer reserved to just women anymore. Do you see why there is so much conversation lately about trans women invading women's spaces? We were talking about sports just a few months ago. Now people like this are making videos on how being a lesbian is no longer just reserved for women, how anybody can be a lesbian. Yet I find it interesting how we never really see videos like these of trans men or hear much about trans men trying to invade women's spaces. It seems like it's only ever really the men in wigs who are fighting to, be around little girls at Pride and things like that. I think that's pretty interesting. But anyway, butch lesbians are still women. They're just masculine women. They're women that like to wear long khaki pants with the classic iconic black shirt could never miss it, with your slick backed, gelled black hair. That's your standard butch lesbian. But apparently, this generation wants to call them gender non-conforming lesbians. And it's crazy to me how we're hearing more and more things like this of, going back and rewriting and being like, oh, well, this person was not fitting traditional gender roles, so they must be gender non-conforming. They must be non-binary. Yet, just a few years ago in 2015, we were all rejoicing and trying to normalize James Charles being the first cover girl because he was a boy in makeup. Now people are saying, you like things of the opposite sex? Well, are you sure you're not that gender? It seems like there's no room for middle ground. Again, just a few years ago, we were trying to fight for toys that would be more inclusive to children, that would teach little girls to be scientists and things like that. And now we are teaching little girls that if they want to be scientists, then maybe they're men. When I was a kid, we used to just call them tomboys, and there was nothing wrong with it. There were just girls who weren't into putting on their mom's high heels or putting on the princess tiara. They didn't like to play in the Claire's makeup. They quite literally just wanted to be outside playing with the boys or hanging out with the boys or playing hide and seek. And it was fine. And to back this up, I want to show you this clip from iconic butch queen Rosie O'Donnell because I think that she explains this perfectly.
Told me that her stuffed animals were non-binary. I'm like, here we go. Here we go. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean? She goes, they don't feel like a boy and they don't feel like a girl. I said, well, that's fantastic. Do you know what's funny is that I'm a girl who people used to call a tomboy because I liked all the boy stuff when I was little. And you know what's weird? I still do really like the boy stuff. I like football. I like riding a motorcycle. I like to do a lot of stuff that boys traditionally like to do. But you know what else? Never was confused about thinking if I was a boy or a girl. Always knew I was a girl and loved being a girl. So you can be a girl and feel any way you want, or you can figure out what it is. And I'm like rambling. And she said, are you done? Are you done?
Imagine how fucked we are when a child is worrying about her stuffed animals being non-binary. When I was her age, my biggest thought about my toys and stuffed animals was that they could talk. I grew up with Toy Story, so that's what I thought, that my toys could talk. I wasn't worried about them being they thems. And as Rosie stated, she still knew that she was a girl. She was just a girl who gravitated towards things that the boys usually like to do. And like she said, she still likes boy stuff. And as you can see, she's still a girl. She's not a boy. So this whole thought of, oh, well, my child is, they like the trucks more than they like the princess dolls. Well, just because your child does not like the toys that maybe are traditional for their gender doesn't always necessarily mean that you should transition your child or that your child is transgender to begin with. But that's a whole different topic for a whole different video. Nonetheless, Rosie still knew that she was female. Never in her mind did she think that she was anything different because, like she said, she was a tomboy, but she was still a girl. What's not clicking? And if I'm being honest, being who she is, I am quite curious to know what she would have been like if she would have grown up in this generation. Like she said, she was a girl that liked the boy stuff and again, still likes the boy stuff. So growing up in this generation where people automatically assume that their child is transgender because, Sally likes trucks instead of, princess dolls, I wonder how she would have grown up if she was in a setting where it was accepted or, understood that you could do this. The modern definition of gender nonconforming or non-binary, meaning you identify as no gender and all gender all at once, is new. This is a recent definition. People who don't conform to gender have been around for decades, centuries, if you want to say. Prominently, in just the last 40 years, we've had people like David Bowie and Freddie Mercury, but again, those were still just men. And you would think that this group would celebrate what used to be known as just androgyny. We used to talk about breaking gender roles, but now apparently it's not good enough anymore. Now we have to dismantle gender altogether. So, for people like me and lesbians whose sexuality quite literally depends on the existence of gender, that's a bit concerning. Homosexual relationships between men and women have been around for centuries, and it's all over the world. In ancient Greece, it's depicted in literature quite literally all the time. In ancient Egypt, as you can see with these statues, statue of two ancient Egyptian women, Idet and Ru, probably said that completely wrong, depicted in a form typical of married couples. The Italian Renaissance also saw relations between women, as you can tell in this engraving. Ancient India also had laws against sex, including same sex relations, and it can be assumed that if there were laws going against something, then it was probably happening at the time. The Roman Empire also saw literature embracing relations between two women, as is discussed in Ovid's The Metamorphoses. The medieval period also recorded many instances where individuals were executed for homosexual acts, including even burning nuns to death. The list can honestly go on and on. As you can see, lesbian relationships between two women goes back to the furthest points of human history. Simple question. This person said non-man, as in the opposite of a man. So, what's the opposite of a man? A woman. Meaning that a relationship between two non-men would be a relationship between two women. And what have we always called people in a relationship where there is two women? Lesbians. Butch lesbians are just masculine women. Stop trying to make everyone non-binary because they're a boy who likes makeup or they're a girl who doesn't like makeup. Not everybody has to question their gender because they don't conform to society's gender norms. If a woman wanting to be in a relationship with another woman is not what being a lesbian is about, then what is being a lesbian about? By the definition of history, a lesbian is a woman who likes other women. Stop trying to rewrite history. I mention this all the time in my videos, but it seems like the woke ideologues and the gender ideologues are always trying to go back in history to rewrite things. A few weeks ago, I talked about Queen Cleopatra, the Netflix documentary where they covered the life of Cleopatra and actually made her a black woman when she was not a black woman. And then there's always people trying to beg, or even studios now trying to pander and add gay people and trans people in parts of history where, let's be honest, we would just get our asses beat. I don't care who chose what word to identify as what. There are trans men who still identify as lesbians. Lesbian isn't an identity. Do you not understand how dangerous it is for lesbians and people like me for you to say that people decide to identify with being a lesbian? Using words like identity to describe our community makes it seem like a mask to put on. Our community has fought so hard for so long to fight the narrative that we chose our sexualities. Please do not group us in with the fuck shit that y'all got going on over there. And stop trying to make it seem like people suffering from real gender dysphoria are out here changing their genders every 2 seconds.
In January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
It is so harmful for the real transsexual community. These are people who are actually working with medical professionals to transition from one gender to another. People like Blair White and Buck Angel, not people who refer to their gender as an identity, as if it's some sort of alias in a mystery novel. You're basically saying that since some trans men still decide to identify as lesbians, our sexualities basically aren't real because anybody can just identify as anything. And no, babe, I've liked boys since I was 5. You started questioning your gender during the pandemic. We are not the same. I played with my sister's Barbies as a kid. I'm gay as an adult now. I'm not a woman. And to sum this point up, J.K. Rowling said it best. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. And this conversation of women's erasure has been around for years. However, it seems like lesbians, just like women's sports, are the main target right now. And while I am going to make a video soon on the erasure of women as a whole, I saw this video on YouTube as well the other day, and I think it's really relevant to bring up when we're talking about the erasure of lesbians.
Define woman. Go, please. One of you.
A person who their internal idea of what they are is a woman.
Terrible definition. Coming from a lesbian, that destroys the very concept of our sexual orientation. Just saying that it's an idea.
Why?
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 Because you can't be connected and sexually attracted to somebody's brain.
Our sexualities are quite literally defined by the existence of gender. Without a gender binary or a clear definition of the sexes, our sexualities are immediately invalidated. In fact, this is even the case for real transgender individuals. They are transitioning from one gender to the other. This is why we used to call them transsexuals, but it's very interesting how this generation has changed that term. It's almost as if surgery is too far to go for some people, so it's easier to use transgender because you can just put on a wig, go on, TikTok like Dylan Mulvaney and document your girlhood for 365 days, and people will just say, "Oh, gay rights." And it is this generation that has popularized the idea that sex is on a fluid spectrum. And let me say this. Gender is not fluid. Your personality is. Like Ariel said in this video, you can't be sexually attracted to somebody's brain. When you first meet somebody, you don't get a little roster, a little file paperwork, a little manila envelope telling you exactly what the quirks, what the pros and cons are. You kind of have to pick your battles, which is why some people, after years of being in a relationship, after years of being married, they break up or they get a divorce, because sometimes you don't know till you know. And unfortunately, when we're talking about transgenderism, once you know, you no longer have breasts. If sex is fluid, how is a lesbian, how am I supposed to go on a dating app without being called a transphobe? Now you are quite literally forced to be attracted to everyone and anyone as long as they use the label that you're looking for.
Happy Lesbian Visibility Week. Happy Lesbian Visibility Day. From me, I'm Robin. I'm the CEO at Her, and from all of the Her team. To all our lesbians in our thriving community, we see you, we love you. And a big thing we're wanting to talk about this year for Lesbian Visibility Day is the incredible breadth and representation of this lesbian community. There are some, frankly, just like hideous, overbearing, aggressive, offensive voices right now on the internet, the TERFs, and we're them. We are here to make it clear that lesbians exist of all different kinds and types. There is no one way to be a lesbian. And so anyone who is trying to suggest or other you in your lesbian identity can get the out, especially if it's on Her. We are a platform for all lesbians, trans lesbian, non-binary lesbians. You are all part of our lesbian community. And there's no space for TERFs on Her. So with that, happy Lesbian Visibility Day.
The label is all that matters anymore. We used to talk about not caring about labels, hoping that one day we'd get to a world where people didn't have to worry about labels. Now we've gone back to wearing the tags on the back of our shirts and embracing them. Again, just the label, not the parts, not the physical attributes, not the characteristics. And guess what? If you ask for more, you are a transphobe and you are a bigot. Apparently, you may have the look of a female. You may even have boobs to appear female. However, if you ever find yourself in that first initial intimate setting with a woman and she sees you actually have male genitals, you cannot be offended for their lack of interest. You're not what they're looking for. Again, someone's sexuality isn't an identity, and sexual attraction is why it's called a sexuality. Gay people, straight people aren't just looking for you to appear like that sex. They want you to have the same parts. And honey, that's not transphobia. That's anatomy. That's biology. Yet, my fear is that this is just the beginning of what is set to be a very violent future. Right now, we're talking about words, the online crazy talk, but I'm scared that things are going to get much more violent. I've highlighted the violence of gender ideologues in the past in my videos, but every time it seems to get even more violent. I recently came across this site called turfisaslur.com. First of all, to those of you who don't know what a TERF is, let me explain. It's an acronym. It stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, which is defined as an advocate of radical feminism who believes that a trans woman's gender identity is not legitimate and who is hostile to the inclusion of trans people and gender diverse people in the feminist movement. You hear radical and you think that this is a group of extremists, and then you find out that anyone and everyone, including people like J.K. Rowling, one of the most known philanthropists in the world and advocate of LGBT rights, is a TERF, allegedly. So, to sum it up in clear words, it doesn't mean shit. TERF is a slur is a compilation of violence and extremist behavior from the gender ideology movement. And the content of this website and the kind of people that get exposed on here is, first of all, proceed with caution, because it can get pretty violent and pretty descriptive too. And we're going to go into some of those. We're going to go into some of the crazy claims, and then we're going to go into some of the more violent behavior. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and get into some of the crazier claims that are made on this site, because I think it's going to be very interesting to you for you to see the kind of conversations and comments that are being made behind closed doors. So I say behind closed doors because these are things that were posted to Twitter, for example. Most of these are from Twitter, but I have a feeling that these people did not think that people like us were going to be finding out about the kinds of conversations that these disgusting individuals have. So let me go ahead and read you the first one. Calling abortion and access to birth control a woman's issue is transphobic and violent. If you identify as female, your genitalia, no matter what gender it was assigned, is male because it belongs to a male person. Females is such a weird and gross word, very turfy, also MRAE. Don't know what that means, but okay. Can we refer to them as people who menstruate, not women? First of all, I just want to say how creepy it is that this one was posted on, I believe that's March 25th, 2015. Almost 10 years out. We're in 2023, so basically almost 10 years out. They predicted the kind of vocabulary that is being used to describe women now in society. People who menstruate is a common definition of what a biological woman is on the internet right now, especially on TikTok and Twitter. So this is creepy as shit and very interesting. Again, it only furthers my point that these conversations that are being had behind closed doors are actually being very influential. Again, this was said in 2015, and this is actually how people talk now. And this one is my favorite because this is so fucking batshit crazy. Female reproductive rights aren't just abortion or contraception. They're also prostate and testicular cancer screenings, ED treatments, #trans. Testicular cancer screenings, as in balls, as female reproductive rights. Anyway, y'all. Now let's go ahead and get into some of the more violent behavior that is showcased on this site, because it is divided by threads. So just in case you're interested in going through, if you don't want to look into the violent stuff, you can go ahead and look at more of that crazy shit that I just talked about with you. But let's go ahead and get into some of the claims that are made on here that are a little bit more aggressive, let's just say. Also, if you're a TERF, you can get fucked with the business end of the barbed wire wrapped baseball bat. It'd be nice if there were roving gangs of trans women beating the shit out of transphobes, but alas, this doesn't seem to be the case. Just to clarify, and I cannot stress this enough, no TERF deserves teeth. Punch any you see as hard as you can. I say this because talking to them absolutely will not work. Literally kill all TERFs. Intentional misgendering is violence and should be met with violence. TERFs need to be eliminated off the face of the earth. Why are people talking about TERFs? Is there a secret TERF I should be aware of and kill? Like we discussed, some of these are from 2015. So it can easily be assumed, like the whole people who menstruate comment, that the violent language has probably gotten worse in these private corners. So you could imagine the kinds of conversations that are being had on Reddit forums and on 4chan. I can't imagine it to be pretty. It is quite literally some of the most disturbing and delusional shit I have ever read in my life. And that's saying something, because I like to call myself a journalist, and I've seen some shit and I've researched some crazy topics, and that's saying a lot. So women who refuse to submit to men in sports, refuse to be called birth givers, and refuse to be told that they are not proper lesbians are called TERFs. Again, trans exclusionary radical feminist. Not only are they called TERFs, but as you can see, the violence is extensive. And this is just some of the most jarring that I've found on this site. This is just a small collection of the crazy things that you can find on here. Go on there yourself. There are hundreds. Proceed with caution, because it is not for the faint of heart. The political left has always discussed how the right-wingers of this country are going to be bringing on the Handmaid's Tale. But it seems to me every day more and more that the actual group of people who are going to be bringing on the Handmaid's Tale is going to be leftist and gender ideologues. In this day and age, we call women birth givers. We're told to say that not just women can menstruate, that not just women can give birth. We're not even allowed to define what a woman is anymore. And again, this is all because of leftists and gender ideologues, not because of the right-wingers. I feel as a gay man the most unsafe I have ever felt in this country, and it is not because of right-wingers. It's because of my own community, and just like in Gilead, the violence against women is rapidly starting to ramp up. Protect women. Speak out for women. Don't forget the lesbians in our community, our gay community. Lesbians took care of many of us when we were on our deathbeds during the AIDS epidemic. And I know that you're saying, well, you're too young to remember the AIDS epidemic. You weren't even part of it. Yeah, but the previous generation of gays were. And many of us died. And for many of us, the close friendships, relationships that we had with the lesbians in our community are something that none of you should be taking for granted, no matter how many generations far out it is. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't just the AIDS epidemic. We've always been there for each other. Always. And we should still keep doing that. Lesbians have been our trusted friends. They're our family. And all gay men should be speaking up for lesbians right now. For women right now. The women that have shielded us from homophobia, that have been the motherly figures that we needed. In any other world, this would just be a bunch of men encouraging violence against women. Yet another example of what has been called the patriarchy for decades. However, these days, it seems like the word woman is more of a metaphor than an observed part of the human species since the dawn of time. Stop trying to redefine butch lesbians, a staple in our community. They are not gender nonconforming. They are masculine women, and that's okay. I can't tell you how many times a butch lesbian has saved me from getting my ass beat by a homophobe or been a motherly figure when I needed them. This video is an example of how radical and insane things are becoming. A few months ago, the question was, what is a woman? Now the question is, what isn't a woman? And unfortunately, that's not an a girls can dream big and be anything they want. It's a anything can be girls kind of way. Anybody can be a girl because they said so. In fact, are we even sure what a girl is defined as? It seems like the word woman, girl, is illegal now. But let me remind you, a woman is an adult human female, and a lesbian is a woman who is attracted to other women. Anybody can identify as anything. You yourself could identify as a lesbian if you wanted to. It's interesting to me how nobody seems to be wanting to tear down male dominated spaces or making videos about how gay men are actually just men attracted to other non women. I don't fucking know. In the same sense, you don't see trans men trying to take up spots in men's sports, and you also don't see them trying to redefine what a man is or what a man looks like. We can't uplift one group while rewriting and erasing the history of another. You can call yourself whatever you want, but you cannot erase gay history. Guys, gays, butch lesbians, we've fought so hard to get where we are. Do not let this recent group of bad apples silence you. Make your voice heard. Speak up and speak out. If you've ever seen The Handmaid's Tale, it didn't take long before women were forced to wear red robes. And by then, it was already too late. All right, y'all, it's pretty much all I have for you today. If you enjoyed today's video, please give me a like, subscribe if you want to, don't if you don't. And if I pissed you off at any point throughout this video, please leave a comment. It's really good for engagement. I'll see you on the next one.